Thank you so much for joining us today. This is going to be a great experience. We have the pleasure of having Sam Mihara here. Let me just tell you a little bit about who we're about to hear from. So our guest speaker, Sam Mihara, is a national lecturer on the topic of mass imprisonment in the United States. Sam was born and raised in San Francisco. In 1942, the U.S. government forced 9-year-old Sam and his family, along with everybody of Japanese ancestry living in the West, out of their homes and into prison camps. Sam and his family were sent to a prison camp called Heart Mountain in desolate northern Wyoming. The entire family lived in one small room without facilities for 3 years. After returning home, Sam graduated from the Link Wilderman High School, University of California, Berkeley, and UCLA Graduate School with engineering degrees. He spent his career working at the Boeing Company as a rocket scientist. After his retirement, Sam has been a sought-after guest speaker across the country. He lectures every year at UCLA. He has also spoken at several leading universities, including Harvard, Columbia, Yale, and Georgetown. In March of this year, Sam spoke at Congress and the White House. And as of this year, he's spoken to over 100,000 students, teachers, parents, and seniors. On April 20th, 2018, Sam was awarded the National History Teachers Association's Paul A. Gagnon Prize as Teacher of the Year, the first time for a Japanese American. In 2022, Sam was named the JACL's Person of the Biennium for Education. And in 2023, Sam was awarded the Salem, Massachusetts Award for Social Justice. In his compelling presentation, Sam talks about why the World War II camps were created and describes the forcible removal of people from their homes. He explores what happened to people who challenged the government's violation of their civil rights. Sam discusses what daily life in the camp was like, how they got out of the camp, and what it was like for many people when they returned home. And in conclusion, Sam will examine the question, could mass imprisonment happen again? Please welcome Sam Mihara.
Can y'all hear me in the back? You okay? Can you hear me? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, all right, great. Well, thank you for inviting me. This is a very personal story. I've given this talk to over 500 schools across the country and overseas, and I found out by keeping it personal, people tend to remember what happened. So I'm really going to talk about things that I remember and show pictures of things that happened during that time. So the way to start this, and unfortunately the video will not play, but I'll explain what it says. This is President George Bush, and he gave a speech a few years ago at the African American Museum when they opened in Washington. And his first statement, his very first sentence in the speech was, "A great nation does not hide history." A great nation does not hide history. Great starting sentence, and that's been my theme. I found out that a lot of people don't know what really happened during the difficult time in World War II, and so I'm trying to reveal and tell people about what really happened, and that's my objective. Now, the problem began a long time ago, way before I was born. The cartoon on the left shows an Asian with a bloody knife in his mouth and a smoking gun in the other hand, and he's standing over the woman he just killed. And the caption, "Yellow terror threatens white women." That was awful. You know, Asians didn't go around killing white women, but the cartoonists wanted to generate hysteria with all these immigrant Asians coming into the country. And it served its purpose, because a lot of people read that and said, "Oh gosh, we got to stop this immigration of all these Asians." So that was a kind of a hate campaign that generated well before I was born, before my parents immigrated from Japan. On the right side, there's a photograph of a mayor of San Francisco, James Phelan, and he was running for Senate, and he promised to the voters, "If you will vote for me, and if I win, I will guarantee I'll keep California white." Imagine somebody going and the campaign that guarantees you're going to keep the state white. That's awful, but that's the kind of hate that happened a long time ago, and that created a problem for my parents before they immigrated in 1920. But let me introduce you to my family. This is a picture of the Mihara family. That young brat with the folded arms, that's me. I was 8 years old in the picture, and I was a pain in the butt from my mother. I'll never forget that. But regardless, that was me. My brother's next to me, my father's behind me, my mother's to the right, and Grandpa and Grandma Mihara are seated. The elder Miharas were the ones who felt now's the time. They wanted my father to get a good education in Japan, so it'll be easier for him to get a job in the U.S. And so he graduated from a college with a major in English. He learned English very, very well. And of course he knew Japanese. And so he found a job in San Francisco working for a bilingual newspaper, writing English articles. And that was his first job. And he met my mother, they got married. I was born in San Francisco. I'm an American citizen by birth. Always have been. I'm going to talk a little bit more about my citizenship in a moment. After Pearl Harbor, December the 7th attack, it was awful. Life became miserable for Japanese, but we started seeing these kinds of cartoons. On the left, here's a Japanese soldier with his bloodied knife and a Nazi German soldier with his weapon. And they're encroaching over the continental United States. The caption, our homes are in danger now. That means it's the people who are living in the U.S. who are of Japanese or German or Italian ancestry. That's the danger. And that was the purpose of the cartoon, to spread hate against these people who are living in this country. On the right side, there's a ridiculous cartoon. It shows a stream of Japanese starting from the state of Washington, and they're building up more and more people as they come to Southern California, and they come to a station that hands out boxes of TNT, nitroglycerin, and with instructions, go out and destroy the defense facilities in Southern California. Awful, awful, implying that the Japanese living along the West Coast are dangerous. And that, notice in fine print, the cartoon was drawn by Dr. Seuss, the children's artist, and he did more of these kinds of hate campaign against people of Japanese, Germans, and Italians. There was a photographer in those days, a really famous lady named Dorothea Lange. That's her sitting on the car with her camera. And she was good at taking pictures of people. Like the picture on the left, it's labeled migrant mother. The government hired her to go to the farm country in California and take pictures of migrant workers to show the conditions. And you can look at the face of that mother. You can tell Dorothea captured her emotion. It was difficult for her to get food, to put food on the table, and that was the purpose of the photo. And so she became famous. Well, what happened then after the Pearl Harbor attack, the government decided to remove Japanese from their homes. So they asked Dorothea to go to San Francisco and start taking pictures of Japanese people in the process of our being removed. But they gave her one instruction: do not take embarrassing photos. Don't take pictures of guards with weapons, pictures of guard towers and barbed wire fences. That's a no-no. It turns out Dorothea does not take orders. She thinks she's going to take pictures that are important, and you're going to see some today in my talk. The first set of pictures she took, she came to my grammar school. This is my grammar school picture. These are my buddies in my grammar school. They're fourth grade. The guy with a striped t-shirt, he went by the name of Hisashi Kobayashi. The problem we had is our buddies who are not Japanese speaking, they don't know how to pronounce our names, and that was embarrassing. It really sounds bad if they don't know how to pronounce our names. So what we did was we adopted nicknames or abbreviation. And in this case, Hisashi changed his name to Kobe, like a basketball player. So he became known as Kobe Kobayashi, and I'll talk more about Kobe in a moment. A group of three fellas in the second row, they're my buddies, Japanese Americans. The guy in the middle went by the name of Katsutoshi Ito. Now you all probably heard the name Ito somewhere, but you never heard of the word Katsutoshi. And his father said, that was a mistake. Oh my God, people can't pronounce your name. So that's it. What he did was, I'm going to change your name. I'm going to change it to Willie. He became known as Willie Ito. And I'll talk more about Willie. He's quite a different person. The most famous photo that Dorothea took is this one here. It's a group of second grade girls doing their morning Pledge of Allegiance. And look at the facial expressions of all these girls. They're doing their best to show their allegiance to the United States. That's what made the picture famous. And in that pledge, all of you do it every morning. You know that phrase, with liberty and justice for all. When an armed guard comes to your house and removes you and puts you in a prison, you've lost liberty and you've lost justice because there wasn't. The most important guarantee under the Constitution was violated by the government in that process. So that was a very, very important. In that photograph, I want to talk a little bit more about one of these girls in a moment. So Dorothea kept taking more pictures. Here's on the left, there's a billboard that went up half a block from my house, and it said, bye bye, and then that four-letter abbreviation for Japanese, I call it a J word. We really don't like to use that term because it was so demeaning to our people. So we call it the J word, and that was a billboard went up, a real short distance from my house. On the right side, there's a newspaper headline, and it says, ouster, getting rid of the J word in California is near. So the newspapers are spreading hate among all the readers. Now's the time to demand that the Japanese be moved out. So it's the people reading the newspapers who got the motivation to urge the government to move us. Roosevelt made a lot of good decisions because we were fighting a war, but he made a mistake, a huge mistake, on what to do about Japanese, Germans, and Italians. What he did was he turned to his military advisors, the military generals, and asked them, what should I do? And the generals told the president, you should sign an executive order called 9066. And that order was very simple. It says, I, the president, am giving the power to remove people to the military. And he signed it. Very, very important document. With that signature, the generals now had the power. Now, who are the people who have the power to remove? The next map shows the 5 military districts in the country. On the right side, you see the eastern section, which is headed by Lieutenant General Hugh Drum. General Drum, you probably heard the name Drum, the Fort Drum here in New York. Well, he was in charge at that time. He decided, no, I'm not going to remove anybody. And one reason he says, I can't remove them, these are good workers. Why should I remove good workers, put them in prison, and I'll have a problem? So he said, I'm not going to do that. So the Japanese, Germans, and Italians living here in New York got to stay put. You didn't hear of any families being removed because of General Drum. He said no. And similarly, we have the Central, Southern, and out in the Pacific Zone, those generals did the same thing. I'm not going to remove Germans, Japanese, and Italians. However, there's one general in the Western Division, General John DeWitt, General DeWitt. He hated Japanese. He did not hate Germans, he didn't hate Italians, but he hated Japanese. So much so that he said, I am defining who is a Japanese because there were some kids who had mixed parents. And he said, if you have a drop of blood, one drop of blood in your system, that's Japanese, you're still Japanese and you shall be removed and go to prison. That's how much hate he had. Well, what's another evidence of a person has such hate? This photo shows that evidence. These are children with mixed parents. One of the parents was Japanese, the other parent was not. In those days, it was very popular to place children with mixed parents into orphanages. There were orphanages in LA, San Francisco, Seattle. And all these kids were in these orphanages. And General DeWitt found them, and he ordered every one of them to a prison. Look at the third row. These are babies. Babies being held by Japanese guardians, and General DeWitt ordered them all to prison. The picture is taken at a prison site in eastern California called Manzanar, California. So it's clear evidence of how much hate this one general had, and that's the reason why only Japanese from the West Coast. So Dorothea kept taking more pictures. Here's a sign that went up in front of our homes, a poster. It was signed by General DeWitt, and it said, "You have 1 week from this notice to pack up, get rid of your house, get rid of your furnishings, and only take one hand carry to go to prison." And he signed it, and we had to follow those orders. So here's another photo taken by Dorothea. The family's getting ready for the move. The children are wearing dog tags. I remember I had a tag. It had my name, and it had a prisoner number. The government gave me a prisoner number. You know, I'm not a criminal. It doesn't matter. The government decided to give everyone, especially the children wearing dog tags, a prisoner number. So we got ready and we reported to the station in our neighborhood that the buses came, and now we're ready to get on board. And now the armed guards came and searched. They did a body search on everyone. The picture shows this armed guard doing a body search on the elderly and children, and they're looking for weapons. And if they found no weapons, then you're allowed to go on the bus to take us to the prison. The first set of prisons that we went to were horse race tracks. What happened was the government closed all the horse race tracks in the West Coast, converted them to a prison, and we were then required to stay in these temporary prisons in the West Coast. Inside those temporary prisons, we lived in horse stalls. There was no choice. That's all they had available. And when they ran out of horse stalls, they built more horse stalls. And I remember living in one of those. It was a very difficult environment. So after a few months, the trains came to pick us up and go to our final home. And now the guards are shoulder to shoulder with arms, making sure we get on the train. They guarded every exit on the train until we got to our destination. In my case, we went to Wyoming, northern Wyoming. Not everybody agreed to go. There was one fellow named Fred Korematsu. Fred was different. He was really unusual because he had a girlfriend, a white girlfriend, an Italian girlfriend. And that was, by the way, that was really unusual. In those days, our parents said, no, you don't associate with girls of the white race, and that's not a good. But Fred is different. He said, no, I like this lady. And so he got to know her, and they figured out Fred's not going to go. And the way that they're going to do it, they're going to get married, and Fred is going to change his name, and Fred is going to get plastic surgery to make him look white. He's going to impersonate a white person. So he went to a doctor, a surgeon, plastic surgeon, with instructions, and make me look white. On the left, you see his photograph before surgery. Obviously, it looks Japanese. On the right is after surgery. He still looks Japanese. Terrible job. The plastic surgeon did almost nothing. So as a result, Fred was caught, and he went to trial, found guilty. That case went to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court agreed with the lower court saying that you are guilty because you violated General DeWitt's rules. As a result, Fred stayed in prison. One of the worst cases, the worst decision by the Supreme Court, having Fred Korematsu found guilty, and therefore he stayed in the prison. Here's a map of all the camps during that time. The little dots on the left are the horse race tracks. In the middle of the country are the major camps, the family camps. And the one I went to is in Wyoming, called Hart Mountain, Wyoming. And these camps were huge. There are 10,000 people, 10,000 in a single camp at the various 10 camps. So where is Hart Mountain? If you've ever been to Yellowstone, you are very close. Because Yellowstone on this map is on the left, and if you went east of Yellowstone, you come across a town of Cody, Wyoming. Cody was real small, maybe about 2,000 people. And then further northeast is a smaller town called Powell, Wyoming. Powell had about 1,000 people. And Hart Mountain is the name of the mountain in between Cody and Powell. And that's where the government decided to build the one and only camp in Wyoming. Before I got there, I wondered what the people of Cody thought. And I looked at the headlines of the newspapers, and I found this newspaper headline in Cody. And it says, 10,000, and then the J word, are to be interned here. Now that's very misleading, because a reader will say, oh, they're coming to Cody. That wasn't true. We were 15 miles away. But regardless, the newspaper did a terrible job of getting the people of Cody all excited. As a result, the local people of Cody demanded that the government change the design of the prison camp to make it a secure prison with barbed wire fences, guard towers, and armed with sentries carrying weapons. That was the result of the local people demanding that we don't escape. So really, it was a really bad situation created by the media, the newspaper headlines. There's one fellow who remembers what happened. His name is Alan Simpson. He's a senior Republican senator. He's now retired. But the video won't play, so I'll simply explain what he did. In the video, he talked about the local people, because he was a teenager during the war, and he remembers the local people got all excited. And he said the local people said, if those people in the camp escape, they're going to come to town and kill me. A mass, extermination of the people of Cody. And so Alan Simpson remembers that was the hatred that was generated in the town of Cody. So here's the design for the camp. It's like a city. It was a huge facility, 30 blocks. Each block had 24 barracks, and each barrack had about 25 people. It was really a concentration camp. In fact, I call it an American concentration camp, because there were so many people crowded into a small space. Here's what it looks like, the final picture when I arrived. That's Hart Mountain in the background. It's shaped like a heart. That's where it got its name. On the left, you see part of the 450 barracks, and on the right side, you see the barbed wire fence and a guard tower. So when I got there, I remember getting off the train with our suitcase, getting on the backs of trucks, herded like a herd of cattle, loading on a truck, and then we went through the main gate and to our assigned barrack. Everyone who got to Hart Mountain received 2 numbers. We had to remember these because they're very important. The first number is my cell number. 14 is the block number, 22 is the barrack number, and C is my room or cell. The second number, 26737D, that is my prisoner number. It still exists today. There's a file on me, as well as the rest of the 120,000 people in Washington, D.C. at the National Archives. And if you're a relative of somebody who was in the camp, you have access. You can get access to look at those records. Now, if you open my record, here's what you'll find. You'll find my medical records. If I ever went to an ER or hospital, all the records that were put in that file. You'll also find my report card from grammar school. I'm not going to let you see them. They're terrible. But anyway, it shows you how carefully they kept all the records, and all these records are here at the National Archives in Washington. So here are more details of the security system. The guard on the left with a 30 caliber rifle. He's standing in the guard tower. In the middle the details of the guard tower with the floodlights. And on the right side, there were signs along the fence in English and in Japanese. And it says warning for people of Japanese ancestry, because if you cross this fence, there's a guard with a weapon. And that was a deterrent. That was the way they made sure we understood. And no one escaped from Hart Mountain during all the 3 years at that time. Here's the design of the barracks. 6 rooms in the barrack. Our family was in the middle room, labeled number C, which is 20 feet by 20 feet square. Here's what it looks like inside the cell. With 4 beds or 4 military cots, hardly any room for anything else. There's no water, no electricity. We had to go outside for everything we needed, the toilets and the food and the schools and so forth. Here's a picture of the family in front of the barrack. That's me in a white shirt, and my brother's in a sweater. My mother's on the left, and her 3 sisters, and an uncle. The toilets were embarrassing. This is a community toilet with 10 toilet bowls. I mean bowls. There's no seats and no seat covers. And there'd be a line of 100 people after meals. If you're lucky, you get to sit on a bowl. And you notice something strange, because there was no partitions. And so what happens is, when it came time to do your business, there are 9 faces watching you. That was really weird. But we have to get used to it. We all got used to it because there was no choice. And that was our toilet facility at the camp. The food that we had looked something like this. The kid who's looking at you has a plate of potatoes. The mother is eating a plate of pickled vegetables. And in the picture, there was powdered milk. The Japanese did not eat that kind of food in those days. We love fresh veggies. We like rice. We like some protein in the way of poultry. And we like fresh eggs and fresh milk. As a result, the farmers in our camp went to work and created farms just outside the prison. So after 1 year of hard work, we were able to get the kind of food that we were accustomed to. The winters were horrible in northern Wyoming, minus 28 degrees. Minus 28, and the snow was blowing horizontally, called a blizzard. And we had to walk through that to go to school, to go to the restrooms, and so forth. It was not very good. There was a hospital. All it was more barracks, and they were connected by a corridor. And our family had a lot of medical problems. In particular, my father, he had a case called glaucoma of his eyes. And he was being treated in San Francisco. But when he came to Hart Mountain, there were no doctors who knew how to take care of glaucoma. And General DeWitt would not let him go back to see his doctor, even on a short visit. So my father, he went blind in camp. He never saw again. That was a disaster, really, for our family. But that wasn't the worst case. The worst was my grandfather. Grandpa died in camp. What happened was he had cancer. He had colon cancer, and the doctors, the very limited skills, they were family practitioners, they knew very little about how to relieve the pain, suffering from cancer. As a result, I watched my grandfather pass away. Horrible, horrible death. But all because of lack of adequate medical care. So that was very common among the prison camps. At the very end, there was an attorney, a white attorney in San Francisco by the name of James Purcell. Mr. Purcell came to our rescue. He knew the conditions in the camp. He went to some of the camps. He saw the horse stalls. He saw conditions that were really inhumane. Well, he decided to do something. He filed a lawsuit against the government saying, you cannot do that. It's unconstitutional. You can't deny American citizens of their liberty and their right to due process. So he filed a lawsuit against the government, and the Supreme Court decided 9-0, unanimous. Let this one lady go and let the rest of the people in the camps go. the most important case that resulted in our release from the camp in December 1944, even before the war ended. So thanks to James Purcell for his initiative in helping us out. So trains came to pick us up, went back home. The government decided to hide the camp. What they did was they sold all barracks, 450 barracks for $1 each to anybody who wants a barrack. And so the local farmers picked them up, used for homes, used for storage, and they were moved off of the property, and the government converted the property into farms. So today, if you went through the area, all you see is nothing but farms. And we're trying to recreate the camp. We're bringing the barracks back one at a time and try to recreate the prison that it used to be. When we got home, life was worse than when we left. This picture shows an example of what our neighbors put up. These signs that says, "Don't stop here, this is no longer your neighborhood." So the hate was really bad. It was difficult for our parents to get jobs, to get housing. And really it was a tough time for our parents after we went back home. After it was all over, we wanted something from the government. We knew something bad was had happened. And we wanted a program called redress. We wanted the government to correct for a mistake that was made. And so we wanted our civil rights restored. We wanted some money. We wanted an apology. So all of these were very important to us. And it took 50 years of effort working on White House and working on Congress. And we're able to then finally get an action going. And during that time, there was an exhibit at the Smithsonian Museum in downtown Washington. And that had the poster girl, Dorothea Lange's poster girl on the outside. And on the inside, there were photographs of families, like this one here. That's U.S. Army Sergeant Kaz Masuda in uniform who came to say goodbye to his family in the prison. And then he was shipped off to Italy where he fought. And unfortunately, he died fighting for this country. And that picture was sent to the White House, and it got to the attention of no less than President Reagan. Ronald Reagan said, "This is the time." So he signed a bill that came from Congress that had the apology, it had some money, the things that we wanted, and he signed it. I received a letter from the first President, George H.W. Bush. In that letter, it had the words, "Sincere apology." That meant a lot to me. Also, the letter had a check. It helped pay for the damages. So that really went a long way toward helping the problem. Hart Mountain today, beautiful mountain, still there. We built something that no one else did. All the other camps put up monuments, that this is the place where we used to be a camp. We decided to build a school. We call it a learning center, and inside the school, there's a series of self-guided tour schoolrooms, and you can walk through and learn what happened in more detail. We bring in kids from all over, bus them in. This picture was taken from high school kids came in from Montana, and we would spend all day working, having them go through the school, looking at the grounds and learning really what really happened. And that program goes on year-round. I want to close out with some snapshots of my buddies. Here's one of Kobe Kobayashi. Well, our parents knew there was a real problem, and the way to solve it is they really demanded that we get a good education. So it turns out, University of California, Berkeley is right across the bay from San Francisco. And so many of my friends and myself, we went to Berkeley. And it was pretty easy to get in, it was affordable. So that worked out well. Kobe became a pharmacist, and he was very, very successful. Willie Ito, he was different. He said, "I'm not going to go to college. I have a different goal. My objective is to be a good cartoon artist." He wanted to be the world's best cartoon artist. And I guess it's okay if you're really good, you can get a job. So he went to an art school, and he was hired by Walt Disney. And that worked out well. He became head of the quality control, and that worked out fine. Around that time, Walt Disney created a movie. And let's see, I can't play the film because the projector doesn't work, but I think you'll recognize this scene. Two dogs sipping a noodle until their lips met. And that movie is made by Walt Disney, called Lady and the Tramp. Oh, anybody seen Lady and the Tramp? Anybody seen? Oh yeah, a lot of you did. The artist for Lady and the Tramp was Willie. Willie Ito created the movie Lady and the Tramp. So he's been honored. He's got all kinds of world awards for animation, and he's done well. I went to Berkeley. I went to UCLA grad school. I loved engineering. Hired by the Boeing Company. I worked on rockets that put man on the moon, rockets that put up satellites, and I had a great 42-year career. But after I retired, I wanted to do something different, and I'm doing what I'm doing today. I've been to over 500 schools teaching about what happened. I really enjoy doing that. Oh, what happened to the poster girl, that iconic image of Dorothea Lange? Well, she grew up. She looked something like this. On the left, a recent picture, and on the right, the original picture. The scene was a museum in Los Angeles that featured Dorothea Lange's photo. And if you look closely, look at the eyes. The eyes look the same, the nose is the same. That's her. That's still the same lady. And she changed her name twice. Her first name used to be Hideno, Japanese name. She changed it to Helene. Her last name used to be Nakamoto. And she changed that to Mihara. We've been married for almost 70 years. And no, she didn't know that at the time Dorothy took a picture, but one of the relatives saw her picture as a child at the Smithsonian. So that's how she found out. And we have a family. We have 2 daughters and 2 grandkids. But no one's a kid anymore. Everybody's graduated from college, and so we're back to the original 2 in our family. I'm going to then conclude with a question. Why? Why did this happen? Why did it take place? And the answer is, I told you. Remember the hatred? Remember the headlines in the newspaper, the billboards that spread hysteria? And remember some leaders who failed to honor our constitutional rights. So the question is, can it happen again? Well, it almost happened. It did not happen to Italians, and it did not happen to Germans. It could have. More recently, it almost happened to Muslim Americans after 9/11. People were demanding Muslim Americans be put away. More recently, it's going on today with children of immigrants. I've been to some of those prisons in the country. I've been to some in Arizona, Texas, Florida, Pennsylvania. And they're not good. They're bad places to keep children. So I simply say, it could happen again. There's no such thing as a good mass internment of a race or a group of people. And it should never, ever happen. Think about it this way. This young boy looking at an armed guard, very worried. Where's he taking me? This lady inside the prison after 3 years asking, when do I get out? And this young fellow decided, I'm going to climb out. And he's trying to climb out from the prison, not knowing there's a guard with a weapon looking at him. So I simply say, never again to anyone at all, never again. Well, that concludes my talk for today. I appreciate your attention. We have time for a few questions. Mr. Davis, you can call on the audience. I'll be happy to answer almost everything. If we don't have time to answer all the questions, I'll take it by internet. But anyway, fire away. You must have at least, I've answered every possible question, so I can handle almost anything. Anyone have any thoughts, any questions at all? Not at all? I'll give you one question I get from high schoolers. How much money did you get? What'd you do with your money? The answer is $20,000. $20,000 for anyone who was living when Reagan signed the bill. So 50 years after the prison, if you were still living, you get a check. But the problem was a lot of people died in 50 years. So my father didn't get it. My mother could have used the money. My grandpa didn't get it because they obviously died in camp. So the problem was, it took a long time to get the approval. But anyway, it was done, and that worked out pretty well. Oh, here's a question. Great.
What happened to your brother?
What happened to
Your brother.
my brother? My brother's still alive, 2 years older than me. He took over my father's business. My father created a business to help pay for the expenses because he was blind. He opened up a stationery and bookstore and a paper goods store in San Francisco. And now it's called the Paper Tree. It's one of the best places to buy origami paper. You know the art of folding paper, the Japanese folding paper? They sell all kinds of different papers from Japan, and they became known as that. So that's what my brother's running right now. Yeah.
Anyone else?
Anyway, okay, go ahead.
How long were you in the internment camp for?
How long? I went in at 9, came out at 12, so 3 years. Exactly 3 years I was in the camp. Yeah. Anyone else at all? Yes.
What was school like in the camp?
Oh, what was school like? Well, when we got there, the government just put up empty barracks for the schools. And so we had to go to school. We walked in and there's empty barracks. There's no furnishing, no school books, and no certified qualified teachers. So the teachers had to come from the prisoner ranks, and there weren't. The better ones went to the high school, but the grammar school got the less better ones. And I remember my teacher was terrible. The problem she had, she couldn't maintain discipline. She never learned how to maintain order in the classroom. We had a lot of fun, but it was disruptive. And anyway, I don't remember learning anything in grammar school. Anyone else? At all? Yes.
How old are you?
How old are you?
I'm sorry?
He wants to know how old you are.
How old? That's personal. How old do you think I am? You're right. I passed 91, I'm on my way to 92. Right.
Ms. Ross?
So, what do you think about recent efforts to ban books around the country?
What do you think of recent efforts to ban books around the country?
I tell you, it's no good. I was invited to speak in Florida at a state college, and the governor laid down the rule: no teaching, no spreading word, no books having to do with diversity of minorities. I got a call from the state college host, and the lady says, "Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, but I'm going to be fired if I let you come on the campus." And that was bad. Really. And so they're taking all the books out that talks about diversity, and they're canceling all speakers who come in. Florida is the only state that's done that to me. 500 talks, and there's one state asked me not to come and talk. You know, it's really, really bad. I hope that will change someday, because you can't hide history. That's not right. You know, General Bush, but President Bush said the same thing. He said, it's important. We've got to keep history open. People should learn what happened. Anyone else?
Yeah. Over here.
There were 30,000 Japanese Americans who volunteered to fight for this country. And one of the most famous groups is called the 442nd Infantry Group. And just to show you how heroic they were awarded 21 Congressional Medal of Honors. 21 in one single unit. And they had a huge number, I forgot the number, but it's in the hundreds of soldiers who died. One of them was what I talked about, Sergeant Masuda. So it was no question about it. Now, did everybody agree? And the answer is no. At Heart Mountain, there was a group who resisted going to be drafted. And there were some 90 of my friends, they're older than me, but they were arrested and taken to a trial in Wyoming, Cheyenne, Wyoming, and they're all found guilty and sent to prison, either Leavenworth or one in the state of Washington. And they were held there until President Truman gave them a pardon. So it worked out well because they were against the principle of serving the country when their families are still locked in a prison. So I don't blame them. It was very heroic of them to do that. So that was one case of resistance that we had in camp. Anyone else?
What do you recommend people do when they face hatred and discrimination? So what do you recommend people
Well, couple of thoughts. It's an interesting question. First of all, remember your rights. Remember your constitutional rights. That you deserve liberty and you deserve justice, and that's supposed to protect you. And if something happens or somebody tries to remove you from your home, you got to scream bloody murder and get help. Get NCL to help you, whatever. But that's very important. But the other thing that I think is important is, and I get this question frequently, what can I do? I'm only a high school student, such a earth-shaking, huge political issue like this. And the answer is you can do a lot. First of all, you can learn about what happened. You can get ready for the day you will vote for the leader of this country. You want to look for things that a candidate did in the past. Don't just listen to promises, because promises seem to disappear after they become a leader. But look at what they did in the past and then figure out, is that the kind of a person that you want leading the country? So you can do that. But you can also do things like speak up. Even at your age, you can speak up and join others who feel strongly about an issue and make sure that hatred is not allowed, that you don't want it, and no one wants it, except for a few people who want to do that. So those are the things that come to my mind as far as what to do. But the most important is leaders. Make sure you help pick the right leader so it doesn't happen again. Anyone else? Yes, go ahead. Oh, interesting question. Are there any books? Yes, there's my book.
We will buy it.
Did I give you a copy of the book? Or? Oh, okay. Yeah, before they come with me in the car, I got a book for you. There's a lot more where it came from, so I did some in the library. There are other books. If you'll on Amazon or look on one of the websites and type in Japanese or Japanese American internment, and you'll get a list of books. There are several who wrote it, but the best one is mine. You gotta get it. Anyone else? Yes. Let me repeat it.
When they got
okay.
you noticed that 1 week to travel.
Yeah, right.
Did anyone try and leave the state or go somewhere?
Oh, a good question about did anybody leave and not go to the camp? Oh, I should have made it clear. The government said you don't have to go to camp if you move back east. Get away from the West Coast. Get away from General DeWitt's rule. And we were allowed to do that, but nobody wanted to go back east. We didn't have a job, we didn't have a house. Why would we do that? So most people simply said, let the government take care of it, says we go to the camp until we got back home. So that's what happened. No one really wanted to move. Anyone else? Yes, right here.
Were your parents forced to swear allegiance to the United States?
Oh, good question about parents being required to. I don't know if all of you know it. Every immigrant who comes to this country, every immigrant, starting way back when my father immigrated, had this sign swear they no longer have allegiance to their home country. I don't know if you're aware of that, but that's what they had to do. No, it still happens today. You have to swear allegiance to the United States of America and not swear and continue your allegiance to the home old country. And so that's going on today. Very, very important feature of our immigration law. So, anyone else?
What was your daily life like in the internment camp?
Oh, daily
Besides
life.
school?
Well, we had to go to school during the weekday. That's obvious. But that was a problem after school and on weekends. Now, at my age, at age 9, I wanted to have fun, like most kids my age. We would do some crazy things to have fun. For example, the area was the home of American Indians, Native American Indians in the past, called the Crow Indians. And there was a lot of arrowheads all over it. So we would collect arrowheads and make up a collection and make a nice little display of arrowheads. And then we do some other really more crazy things. We would go out and capture rattlesnakes. Now, coming from the city, we've never seen a snake. Capturing rattlesnake was a lot of fun. And we would further cut off the tails and make up a collection of rattlesnake tails. So we do some really crazy things like that. So anyway, you got to read my book to hear about other stories. Yeah, anyone else at all? Anyone?
Yeah.
How do I feel about the guards who kept us in there? Well, the guards did their thing. They went up to the tower, did their thing, went back to the camp. They never came inside. We never saw a guard with a weapon come inside. So we never communicated with them. We don't know, who they were. And that was okay. We didn't want to develop a relationship with the guard. So it worked out well. There was no problems with the guards at all. Anyone else?
All right, let's give Sam a big round of applause.